My name is Helen Mott. My presentation today is virtual, as unfortunately COVID has stopped me from being able to attend the conference in person. I'm a consultant in equalities, specifically gender equality and tackling sex discrimination and gender-based violence. I've also been involved for a number of years in the policy world around addressing sexual harassment and misconduct in higher education in the UK and internationally. The British Council, which I'm sure most people will be aware of, is an important stakeholder and force for good in cultural relations, and particularly in education and transnational education, asked me to research a report that would help them identify how to maximise the impact of the excellent work that they do and look at ways in which they might do more or achieve more for promoting gender equality and empowerment, which is central to the British Council's values in their work and in the work of partners as it relates to higher education. The report was launched last month and it is packed full of data and resources. We believe that this is in fact the first time that research and best practice from around the world on all the thematic areas in which gender inequalities are manifested in higher education has been pulled together into one resource document. Given the time available today, I'm going to restrain myself from picking out and discussing in any depth the individual research studies or the excellent case studies in the report that demonstrate the power of effective interventions, and say that I very much hope that you will find all of these gems for yourselves as you explore the report. What I'm going to do with my 10 minutes today is walk you through how the report is structured and how to get the most out of it. As I've just hinted, this is a lengthy report. It's been designed to be used as a reference document, a technical tool to tip into for evidence and guidance. The title of the report is Maximising Impacts, because what we hope it does is take what we know about how progress is made toward gender equality in the world of higher education and help all the stakeholders to really maximise every opportunity they have through mainstreaming gender equality considerations into everything they do, while taking advantage of the best evidence for how to do that effectively. So to give you an overview of the report, it begins with a review of what we know about the gender transformative role of higher education in itself. And then readers are invited to look at the good, the bad and the excellent, looking at the legal and policy frameworks that encourage and support gender equality in different countries and regions, with examples. And then what we know about the participation and progression of men and women from enrolment and subject selection as students through to academic and research careers and progression within those careers. For too long, the method of simply counting the numbers of women or men on courses or in jobs or senior roles has been used as though this is the only important measure of gender equality. We know that using these measures selectively can be unhelpful and certainly counterproductive at times. While it is important to monitor and set targets for enrolment numbers, and to be glad that global figures tell us women on average are accessing higher education in numbers that couldn't be dreamed of 50 years ago, including outnumbering men in many cases, everything that we know about lifelong social inequality between women and men should tell us, and it does tell us if we look at the research into barriers and biases that women encounter in higher education and their outcomes, that the way that higher education is done can reproduce and reinforce in existing inequalities in society, sadly. The upside is the research also tells us we can play an active role in challenging and overcoming the barriers to women's equality, not just in higher education, but through higher education to society more widely, if we are intentional about doing it. It's one thing to accept that society is sexist or discriminatory towards those from sexual and gender minorities, but it's another to accept that our own practices and our own perceptions can be biased too, however well-meaning we are. Which is why it's so important to be able to share data from well-designed experiments that show even being labelled as a woman causes people who haven't met you to rate your performance as a teacher, a writer, a job applicant lower than they do with people who they believe are men. This report marshals the compelling evidence that helps us as practitioners and activists to ask others to join us in reflecting on the hills that we still have to climb. A glance at the headings in the evidence section of the report shows the thematic areas that are explored and evidenced in the report. If I was going to summarise them incredibly succinctly, it would be to say that first, a holistic approach is needed. Just as one example, the threat and reality of sexual and gender-based harassment, abuse and violence plays a significant role in moderating the freedom and access and choices of learners, academics and researchers as they navigate or abandon their path in higher education. Gender equality will never be achieved where gender-based harassment and abuse are not woven in to every intervention. Secondly, take a life cycle approach. Look at a life's journey from primary through secondary to tertiary education and beyond, as with this image that's from the FCDO and British Council's transitional Padalea project in Lebanon. Look at factors that impact differently on women at different stages in their personal and professional lives because of who they are. And thirdly, intersectionality and compounded disadvantage is critical to assess and address. As Louise Morley has said, woman is not a unified analytical category. Research tells us both that there are specific challenges to women who are disadvantaged or discriminated against because of the intersection of their sex or gender with other specific characteristics, and that putting effort into expanding social or cultural ideas about academic excellence to include privileged white women without representing women in all of their diversity is likely to create disadvantage for marginalised women. Back to the report. The second section of the report looks specifically at how the British Council and others work to promote gender equality and empowerment in the higher education domain. And while there are lots of examples of good practice woven throughout the report, there are also 17 individual case studies, including 12 from British Council programmes that showcase and give pointers for good practice. There are tables of resources, which I'll come to in a minute, as well as 12 broad recommendations for improved impact for gender equality interventions. I want to draw your attention to the index of countries and regions at the back of the report. As you can see from the example of the text on the right, information throughout the report is also indexed by country and by region. These are picked out in green text in the report, and the index enables readers to quickly pull out close to home examples from within their own geographical communities. I want to end this very brief overview by showing you what one of the resource pages in part 2 of the report looks like. Please don't strain your eyes by trying to look at the text from this page of the report. It's there to be illustrative. This is the resource page for the strategic focus area of the professional development of educators and researchers. It provides details about the kind of activities that can be undertaken, case studies for inspiration and for depth, assistance with setting monitoring and evaluation criteria, and the resources that are publicly available to help. I want to thank the British Council for investing in this work and for publishing the research and findings for the benefit of the wider sector. I hope you'll find the report useful, and I'm always happy to be contacted about it.